This is William Allen. I'm coming to you from Havre de Grace, Maryland, asking the question, Cui Bono? About this word benefit, can there be any advantage in defining, refining, and fretting about whether it is helpful? Some say it is a matter of perspective, but whenever did perspective become the basis for understanding grammar, rather than the reverse? Moreover, should we not ask whether we are providing school children perspectives or history? You might say, history is just a matter of perspective. But that is where we jump off the cliff and the entire discourse slumps into a cul-de-sac if it does not altogether smash into irrecoverable pieces. So about that word benefit, come, let us reason together. The Latin cui bono means whose good, whose benefit. Until we define the subject of a benefit, we cannot establish the character of the benefit. In opening, I use words that are closely related: benefit, advantage, helpful. We could add others, such as success, but we begin by noting that those words are in some respects synonyms and in some respects not. A benefit, strictly speaking, is a good work or good done. That may not be apparent to folk who have become accustomed to think of a benefit only in terms of a government check. But since it is far from intuitive that government checks and a potentially resulting dependence are in any way a benefit, that is a far more likely misuse of the term benefit than the usage which holds that a person benefits from an apt application of divine talents and strength of character. For surely what one does to the advantage of oneself and or others is for oneself and or others a benefit. Surely what is helpful to oneself and or others is for oneself and or others a benefit. And as for success, there's the far more revealing fact that anything which describes successful exertions by persons held in slavery could never be called a success of slavery, except by denying the God-given talents of persons held in slavery and thereby absolutely degrading the enslaved from the status of human. We see a good example of this in the generations-long teaching about the slave revolts led by Nat Turner and Denmark Vesey. These were heroic and noble, but failed efforts. They are facts of history, and they must be taught as the Florida curriculum requires. But why should they be taught to the exclusion of the successful revolt led by Madison Washington, the only successful slave revolt in North America? Washington led more than 100 enslaved persons being transported from the Upper South to slave markets in New Orleans, commandeering the brig Creole, sailing to Nassau in the Bahamas, where on British soil they gained freedom. A clear success that can by no means be called a success of slavery. And it is no less certainly a successful accomplishment when persons held in slavery crimp and save and pay the ransom required to achieve their and their families' freedom from owners. They were, in that case, no differently situated than hostages paying ransom to hostage takers. That is, it is a case of theft, properly considered, but nonetheless, it is for all that a successful release from bondage. Such success is a benefit to the hostage, conferred not by the hostage takers, but by the capabilities of the hostage. The only question, therefore, is whether persons held in slavery retain the human character consisting of divinely given talents, sufficiently to apply those talents for their own benefit. Beware, before you answer, that what is at stake is not merely whether persons held in slavery can do any good for themselves, even in difficult circumstances, but more importantly, whether they are even persons with the full complement of human gifts at all. To deny that they possess God-given talents, even under the severest oppression, is to deny their very humanity. I affirm the fullest humanity of even the most abjectly situated victim of oppression. Who is it, therefore, that denies this? And why do those who deny it have so great need to perpetuate an image of Africans as helpless and incompetent victims? And at what cost does one deny the fullest range of humanity within and among those held in slavery? The great cost is to saddle not only those so situated in a permanent sub-classification as victims within society, the great cost also is to foreclose access to the worthy examples among forebears of whose genius of character, faith, and intelligence inspired their fellows and can inspire still their descendants. To erase their humanity is either to cut them off from their non-enslaved descendants, to erase their stories, or to fasten an enduring sub-classification as victim upon their descendants as well. When Frederick Douglass and William Wells Brown praised the heroism of Madison Washington, they highlighted, yes, the skill, but still more the resilience, fortitude, and intelligence with which Washington led the only successful slave rebellion in the United States. When Washington commandeered the Creole and won freedom for them all, his and their skill and determination achieved what was to them of great benefit. Whoever would deny that must also keep such stories, and those of Douglass and Brown, away from school children. They would bury our young in darkness. And to what end? The stories of our ancestors, the elders, may perhaps be unknown to Vice President Harris, whose lineage descends not from the enslaved, but the enslavers. As for Senator Scott, I cannot conceive how he has failed to understand the importance of preserving the stories of the elders. Is there nothing more than a cheap political point being scored, and not any meaningful contribution to historical understanding? Do they fear that people otherwise might begin to think for themselves? It is hard to resist such imputations when the simplest grammar suffices to refute false charges that the Florida curriculum teaches that slavery itself was a benefit. In fact, if anything, this curriculum embraces the view that slavery was beneficial neither to the enslaved nor to the enslavers. For the moral degradation of the enslavers wholly negated the unjust material gains stolen from those enslaved. I've received an inquiry from a Florida teacher who is manifestly sympathetic to the curriculum, but who wonders whether the standards might have chosen a better term than benefit to express the capacity of those enslaved usefully to help themselves. Here's what that teacher wrote to me. The enslaved used those skills to build communities after emancipation. This is information anyone can look up because it's fact. However, teachers I've spoken with are struggling with the word benefit. Everything you said is 1000% factual. However, the word benefit is a perspective, respectfully. My fear is because this is so politicized, the teacher's voice will become lost. Because many educators are struggling with the word benefit, why not spell it out in the standards? In addition to agricultural work, for example, the enslaved learned specialized skills such as carpentry, tailors, painters, etc. Once free, they used these skills to provide for themselves and their families and were able to build many Black communities throughout the United States. That is what this teacher said to me. And this very sympathetic response almost wins my entire heart. And I certainly embrace the hearty goodwill that it manifests. However, it contains two droplets of poison that my correspondent is not aware of. The first is the claim that the word benefit is a perspective. No one can reduce Madison Washington's victory to a matter of perspective. The victory is the fact. The benefit is the fact. Secondly, as my correspondent struggles toward a compromise expression, we observe the assumption that what is at stake is the use made of skills after emancipation. It must emphatically be understood that the curriculum standards do not mention the gifts of enslaved persons only as something emerging once the shroud of slavery was lifted. They insist rather that those gifts were present before, during, and after slavery as the fundamental endowment, the fundamental equipment of humanity, and of which our forebears, I speak personally here, were never deprived. If Florida's curriculum for school children does not teach that essential fact, then nothing else will matter at all. There's a lot at stake in that small word benefit. There is no silver lining, no positive good of slavery, and no claim of redeeming value or success in slavery. Still, I do not so much oppose those who have used this language as I pity them. I believe that they would surely prefer to affirm rather than to deny the fundamental humanity of those who were held in slavery, and therefore to validate the stories that such people themselves told. But until they do in fact say that they understand and affirm that moral reality, I can only pray for their eventual rescue from blindness. For there is no advantage in redefining the word benefit. I'm William Allen, and this is what I think. Tell me what you think.